Hello, how are you doing? How's life treating you? And I hope everything is going well. Thank you for stopping by the channel. I'm Dell, your deck technician, and today we're going to go over the deck tech I talked about in our previous video, Hinata Dawn-Crowned. Hinata Dawn-Crowned is a legendary Karen spirit that's 4/4 for 1 and Jeskai colors. She is flying, trample, and the most important part of this ability, spells you control cost 1 less for each target, and spells your opponents cast cost 1 more for each target. Even though she has a 4/4 body on a flying trample creature, this thing screams you want to smack people in the face. But her ability to make things cost more and your things cost less is so strong. Any targeted abilities from get things out the graveyards or targeted removals, pay 1 more. That cost adds up turn after turn. We're going to go over some of the spells that work really well with her in almost every scenario, defensively, offensively, and I even have a win con to help you win if you want to swing with her and just go right to the face. But before we jump into all that, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe and comment down below what you think of the build to get the algorithm in our favor. Well, let's begin. With Hinata's ability, this deck is going to contain a bunch of X costing spells, particularly X casting spells that state X is the number of targets. Because each of those targets, though they cost 1 for each one, Hinata will reduce them, essentially making them free. Example, Aurelius Fury is red, white, and X, stating Aurelius Fury deals X damage divided as you choose amongst any number of target creatures and or players. Tap each creature dealt damage this way, and players dealt damage this way can't cast non-creature spells. So essentially we just pay 1 red, 1 white, and target our opponents and each of their creatures, and we do 1 damage to each of them and tap their creatures and preventing them from casting any non-creature spells. All for just 2 mana. With Meteor Blast, we could pay 3 red to do 4 damage to each of our opponent's creatures and our opponents. With Meteor Swarm, we could pay 3 red and choose up to 8 targets and do 1 damage to each of them. Comet Storm is 2 red and X with a multi-kicker 1. With an X we have from here, we will have to pay out of our own mana source. However, the multi-kicker 1 will be paid for by Hinata. So if we pay 10 in our X, we can then do 10 damage to any number of targets we want, including other players. I find that my favorite playstyle with Hinata is to play very disruptive spells. Example, we can use By Force to pay 1 red to essentially get the same effect as a Vandal Blast by destroying all of our opponent's artifacts. Curse of the Swine is 2 blue to exile each of our opponent's creatures and replace it with a 2/2 green creature. I don't really care if they have 2/2 green boars. Whatever was on the board before then definitely needed to get exiled. Disorder in the Court is by far one of my favorite cards in this deck. It states, for blue, white, and X, you exile X target creatures, then investigate X times. Return those creatures to the battlefield tapped at the beginning of the next end step. Doing so at instant speed means you can use it defensively if someone is attacking you or if someone's trying to do a board wipe. Additionally, if you want a free swing at an opponent's board, you can do so by exiling their field for a clean opening. With Hinata, Distorting Wake because a Cyclonic Rift for just 3 blue mana, targeting everyone's non-land permanents to return right back to their hands. The only caveat is that it'll be at sorcery speed, but still, a 3 cost of Cyclonic Rift is ridiculous. Glimpse the Sun God is a white X that states tap target X creatures at instant speed. Scry 1. Pretty awesome. Keep the enemies from attacking you, or open up a field to attack back and get to look at your top card. I see nothing wrong here. Gridlock is the exact same thing as Glimpse the Sun God. Instead, you don't get to scry, but you can also tap non-land permanents, and it's only 1 blue. Heliod's Intervention is 2 white and X, which allows you to destroy X number of targeted artifacts and or enchantments, or target player gains twice X life, which you would never use that unless you're extremely desperate. But destroying all the artifacts and enchantments that your opponent controls for 2 blue? Disgusting. Icy Blast is just like Glimpse the Sun God, except it's blue, and instead of scrying, because Hinata's on the field with Ferocious, they won't be able to untap until their next untap step, meaning another player can swing in and take them out the game, or use your own creatures to attack him in. March of Swirling Mist is a new card that came out with Kamigawa for blue and X. At instant speed, as additional cost to cast a spell, you may exile any number of blue cards from your hand, which doing so makes the spell cost 2 less. We don't really care about that with Hinata. Up to X target creatures phase out. Again, you can use this offensively or defensively. Very good versatility with Hinata on the field. Open into Wonder is a 2 blue X card that took me a minute to actually truly enjoy. It states, as sorcery speed, you may X target creatures can't be blocked this turn. Until the end of the turn, those creatures gain. Whenever the creature deals combat damage, draw a card. You'll see later on that we have a card that's going to give us a bunch of creatures on the field, and if we get them all unblockable, we're going to get a bunch of abilities to essentially get free cards. Prismatic Boon is blue, white, and X. Instant Speed, it gives X target creatures protection from a single target color of your choice, meaning Blasphemous Act we can be fine with any targeted removal, or allow us to block creatures and not take damage from them. Really good protective spell. Reality Spasm is 2 blue and X that allows us to tap X target permanents or untap X target permanents. Really good way. It's going to synergize with another card you're going to see later on. Now, there are also spells that target multiple creatures that don't have X in their names that Hinata still would gain benefit from as well. Spells like Volcanic Offering is 1 red and 4 that states destroy target non-basic land you don't control and target non-basic land of an opponent's choice that you don't control. Volcanic Offering does 7 damage to target creature you don't control and 7 damage to target creature of an opponent's choice you don't control. Each of those are targets, giving you 4 targets, allowing Volcanic Offering to be only 1 red at instant speed. Semester's End is 1 white and 3 that states exile any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers you control, and at the beginning of your next end step, return them to the battlefield under its owner's control. Each of them enters the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter on it if it's a creature, and an additional loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker. This is basically Teferi's protections for your creatures at instant speed, and as long as you target at least 3 of your own creatures, then this card only costs 1 white. Magma Opus is a red, blue, and 6 that states Magma Opus deals 4 damage divided as you choose amongst any number of targets. Tap 2 target permanents, create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token, and draw 2 cards. If you spread that 4 damage and do 1 damage to 4 target creatures and tap 2 additional targets, this card only costs 1 red and 1 blue. Card the Copper Coats is 1 and 2 that has the ability Strive, stating it costs 1 and 1 white for each additional target beyond the first. It states you can choose any number of target opponents and create X 1/1 human soldier tokens equal to the number of creatures that opponent controls. For its initial casting cost and 2 white, we can target each of our opponents and get a 1/1 human soldier token for each creature they all control. This is the card I was mentioning when I said when Open Wonder, we can make each of these creatures unblockable, then swing in and draw a card for each of our creatures from the Copper Coats. To add salt to that injury, we have Launch the Fleet, which costs 1 white that has the ability Strive for 1 colorless mana, which Hinata would pay for. It states until the end of turn, any number of target creatures gain. Whenever this creature attacks, put a 1/1 white soldier token creature onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. So with that, now we've doubled our numbers and we now have a sizable presence on our battlefield. And the last one that I'm going to mention here is called Domineering Will. It states target player gains control of up to 3 target non-attacking creatures until the end of turn. Untap those creatures, they block this turn if able. Meaning you could take somebody's creatures, it doesn't have to be the person attacking, you can grab someone else's, put them in the line of fire, have them block, clear up the board, and cost you just 1 blue. I see nothing wrong here. Now, when talking about counterspells, Hinata is redonkulous because there is just a bunch of counterspells that cost 4 or 3 mana that will be reduced to 2 or 3 mana, which is cancel and counterspell mana cost, but they'll all have upsides to them as well. So like Arcane Denial is 1 blue and 1 counter target spell. Because of that, this becomes a 1 cost counterspell that allows you and your opponent to draw a card. I don't care about them drawing cards, that's a 1 cost. Devious Cover-Up becomes a counterspell as well that also allows you to grab 4 target cards from your graveyard and shuffle them into your library. Disallow, another one that becomes a counterspell that allows you to also counter activate abilities and triggered abilities. Mystic Confluence is a fun one. It has 5 mana value, but it says choose 3 and you may choose the same mode more than once. Counter target spell unless the controller pays 3, return target creature to the owner's hands, or draw a card. You can choose to counter the same spell 3 times to make them pay 9 mana to get the spell out, or even choose it twice, or choose it once and return 2 target creatures to the owner's hands, and it will still be the same cost as a counterspell. However, if you choose each of them once, you can bounce a creature, counterspell, and draw a card. Since drawing a card isn't target, it would be the same cost as a cancel. Still, cancel with these many upsides, worth. Saw It Coming is one that I really thought about taking in and out of this deck, but I couldn't. It's a foretell spell, which means you can pay 2 mana to exile it, and then you can cast counterspell for 1 blue and 1 colorless, meaning you can just essentially pay 1 blue to counter it. But you can say, well, technically that's 3 mana because foretell, but if you got 2 free mana just to throw this to the side and cast nothing else, I see no harm in that, and then later on just pay 1 blue to counter a spell. Yeah, that's definitely worth it in my books. We have both Unwind and Rewind, both spells that basically counter and untap the lands that you spent to cast it. However, since we're targeting, we're gonna counter the spell and get more land untapped that we spent for it, giving us extra mana for other stuff for the turn. This is just so delicious. Sublime Epiphany is hands down the best, and that's why I saved it for last. It states, for 2 blue and 4, you can choose one or more. Counter target spell, counter target activated or triggered ability, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hands, create a token as a copy of target creature control, and target player draws a card. Now, more often than not, you'll get 4 out of 5 of these. I rarely ever see anyone counter target spell and an activated ability, but either way, you'll get 4 out of 5 of these, and still, it'll just be at the same price as a counter spell. Just 2 blue. What's not the love here? Every deck needs some kind of creatures, even if it's just your commander, I guess. But for the most part, this deck doesn't really rely too much on creatures, and instead relies mostly on our spells to get us by. I have a few creatures in mind that can help us maximize the efficiency of our spells. First one that comes to mind is Battlefield Thaumaturge. You know the word, it's on the screen. It states, each instant and sorcery spell you cast costs 1 less to cast for each creature targets. Sounds familiar? Exactly. It's Hinata's ability on another creature, and they do stack, so this could be great for our X casting spells. He also has the ability that states heroic whenever you cast a spell that targets a Battlefield Thaumaturge. Battlefield Thaumaturge gains hexproof until the end of turn. Not something we really care about. We want that first ability more than anything. After some playtesting, Feather the Redeemed was freaking awesome. It's a 3/4 flying creature that states whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature you control, exile that card instead of putting it into the graveyard as it resolves. If you do, return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. We got a bunch of cards that'll do 1 damage, 2 damage, doesn't matter. It'll just do a damage, it'll maybe stay alive, hopefully. If it doesn't, we don't care, but we get the spell back so we can cast it again, especially if there's a card that says tap target creature. Well, sure, I'll tap something I don't care about. I don't know, maybe my Battlefield Thaumaturge. Boom, whatever, it's been targeted. Now it has hexproof tapped, and I get the spell back. This card is just so good. Speaking of targeting our own creatures for benefit, we have Orvar the All-Form. I love this guy. I've wanted to make a commander based on him for the longest, and I figured, screw it, I can just add him to this deck and live vicariously through Hinata. He states, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, if it targets 1 or more other permanents you control, create a token that's a copy of one of those permanents. Whenever a spell and ability an opponent's controls cause you to discard this card, create a token that's a copy of target permanent you control. That first ability is what we want more than anything. We just choose a few of our creatures, tap them, create tokens of them. As long as it's not legendary, we can stack up. Could you imagine having a whole bunch of Thaumaturge? Oh my, the Battlefield Thaumaturge would be really awesome to have a bunch of these, and any of our other creatures that aren't legendary that I'm not mentioning in this deck that get benefits whenever we cast spells. Yeah, I love this guy. Soulfire Grandmaster is a 2/2 human monk with lifelink that states instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink, and you can pay 2 blue or red, I'm not sure how to say that. It says the next time you cast an instant sorcery spell from your hand this turn, you may put that card into your hand instead of your graveyard as it resolves, allowing us to, since all our spells are so cheap, we can just pay the extra 4 mana to get us back to cast it again next turn. Yeah, I love this card. And lastly, Kaikar Wind's Fury is a 3/3 bird wizard with flying that states whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. You can sacrifice any spirits to gain 1 red mana, which is great for when we just want to end the game, pay a bunch of that mana, and just put it into our X spells and just blow something or someone up. This deck doesn't have many artifacts or enchantments that really synergize well with the deck, just because I put it on spells, but there are a few that really get to me. There's the Elementalist Palette. It states whenever you cast a spell that has X in its mana cost, put 2 charge counters on Elementalist Palette. You can tap this as a mana rock, or you could tap it and gain 1 colorless mana for each charge on it, and then spend that only for X spells. This deck has a ton of X spells, allowing us to just dump the free mana into it, and if we can get that spell back and cast it again, this is some gross stuff. Sharknado, sorry, I meant Shark Typhoon, same thing, is my favorite enchantment that's in this deck. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a XX blue shark creature token with flying, where X is the spell's converted mana cost. This has a cycling ability, but I don't see me ever actually cycling this card, however. And just like it, we have Metallurgic Summonings that states whenever you cast an instant and sorcery spell, create a XX colorless construct artifact creature token where X is that spell's mana value. The best thing about these two cards is that whenever you cast a spell with X in it, the mana value is how much X you put into it. So let's say we did a Aurelius Fury for, I don't know, 13 targets. Well, there's 1 red, 1 white, and the 13 targets, making that a 15 mana value spell, giving us a 15/15 colorless artifact creature and or a 15/15 flying shark. This can get out of hand really fast. Now, with everything we have here, some board control is great, but we need to figure out what's our main way of winning. Main-ish. I'm really bad at Spellslinger wins. However, with Mass Manipulation for 4 blue and double X, we can gain control of X target creatures and or planeswalkers and swing right back at them with their devastating boards and kill them with their own creatures. Kinda poetic. Cracker with Power is 2 red and 3 X. The stage Cracker with Power deals 5 times X damage up to each target. So if you target each creature at least once, you got to pay a chunk of mana. But with the Battlefield Thaumaturge, that pays for that as well. So we just paid the actual X number of targets and 5 times the damage. We don't even have to put much mana into this for this to do game-winning amounts of damage. We could just target our enemies, and that's 15 damage there just for the bare minimums. This is ridiculous. The best part is both these spells have X in their cost, meaning if they don't kill, well, both of our enchantments can make really husky creatures, but also we can get additional bonuses through our Battlefield Thaumaturge and our Elementalist's Palette. That's so hard to say for some reason. But yeah, it's going to help us get this win off. Now, if combat is just your ideal way to clap cheeks and win games, I respect that. I'm about that. With Runechanter's Pike, you can equip your Hinata Dawncrown and give her +X+0 first strike, where X is the number of spells in your graveyard. With the number of spells we'll be slinging, it should easily be 20 plus first strike and trample, and just delete players with commando damage. And there you have it. This is a Hinata Dawncrown I would bring to the table to clap some cheeks with some friends and have a good time. The next deck tech I plan on making will be Ishin 2 Heavens as 1. I know these videos are coming out really slow. I'm really sorry, and I'll try to bring them out much faster. Already the next set is coming out. Now, I'm already looking at some of those spoilers to get a head start in those. But if you did like this video or have any comments on what you would do differently, please let me know in the comment section down below. I try to answer every single one in a timely manner because you guys are really smart, and seeing the cards that I didn't even know existed helps my deck techs become that much better. But anyhow, I'm going to get the heck up out of here. Thank you guys for everything. You have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Stay awesome. Yeah, bye.